Welcome to the Comtech Life, where we explore how technology is shaping the way we work and live. I'm your host, Chrissy Neuterman. My guest today is Tiana Veldwisch, a fractional product leader, team effectiveness consultant, and coach who left corporate to build her own practice, Tiana V Consulting. She works at the intersection of tech and climate, and I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say about it. Tiana, welcome to the Comtech Life.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. It's great to be here.
So let's just start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. My background is in engineering and product management. I went to college for engineering and quickly found product as a role that sort of merged the how do we get what we want to do done? How do we wrangle the resources? I loved being sort of that communication translator between the technical and business side of what we were trying to accomplish and solving real problems. So I spent 15 years or so in the product management space, first in the health tech realm and then moved over into climate. Got my MBA at MIT along the way. And a few years ago, as you mentioned, I set out on my own to build my consulting and coaching practice. And now I find myself here today.
And so, working across those few different lanes with consulting, coaching, and fractional product work, how did that come together? And is there a thread that connects it all?
Yeah, so I was working with a career coach. I'm a big fan of coaching. I think everyone should have a coach. I was working with a career coach and trying to figure out what aspects of past roles I'd really thrived in and
Mhm.
felt fulfilled doing. And there were parts of that in product management roles and product leadership roles that I was really loving. And the team effectiveness, as I've sort of coined the term, was something that I was getting to do as a product leader because we would have teams of people working on different aspects of a product or of a product family. And I would be trying to help them to work together more effectively and collaborate and share resources and aim in the same general direction so that they'd end up with something cohesive. But I was doing that as just an aspect of what needed to be done to achieve the product goals. But
Hmm.
I found that was what was really fun and exciting for me. And I had done some organizational work and some facilitation through my MBA, but wanted to spend more time on that teamwork. How do we work together well? How do we communicate well? Aspect of the work. And frankly, some of the other pieces of product leadership had started to feel very political, right? There
Hmm.
was a lot of who gets how many resources, what's happening in this next restructure, like fiefdoms and turf wars between groups, and that was really off-putting to me. So
Hmm.
in working with this coach, I was identifying the aspects of the roles that I really liked and trying to figure out, well, what sort of product management leadership role could I have these pieces but not those pieces? Could I have, the team stuff but not the political fiefdom stuff? Oh, and by the way, I want to work a little more flexibly, like maybe 75, 80% time. I'm very sandwich generation right now between young kid and aging parent. And so I was trying to figure out, well, where could I find that role? And my fantastic career coach said, "Well, can you create it?"
Hmm.
And that was sort of the spark that I needed to think about, well, how might I create a role that included all the pieces I wanted, but not the things that I didn't want? So it was a grand experiment, but 3 and a bit years later, so far I'd say it's working.
So, tell me about that exact moment that you were like, okay, it's time to go out on my own. Because I know that could be a really scary leap.
Yeah, I mean, so I was very fortunate to be laid off right in the middle of this career exploration. So I was able to say to my coach, great news, that decision of can I find that next right thing here or do I need to seek it elsewhere?
Hmm.
That piece got made, and I had the buffer of a little bit of severance and so the kick in the butt to go try something. And one thing I did, and I've shared this with other folks thinking about going out on their own, is I looked at the remainder of that calendar year and said, well, I've got this amount of severance and I've got, this little bit of unemployment over a couple of months. If I don't bring in any more revenue, any more income, if I can't find any client work between now and Christmas, what's the delta? How much do I need to draw from our savings to keep our family, living in the lifestyle that we're living? And that amount was it was not nothing, but it wasn't astronomical. It was
Hmm.
an amount of money I could conceive of writing myself an imaginary investment check.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
some folks when they start a thing do sort of a friends and family round. I did my own sort of imaginary friends and family round where it was just me. And I said, well, if I invest this much in trying this out for the rest of this calendar year and see how it goes, that gave me the freedom to not look every 2 weeks at the balance sheet, the
Hmm.
inflows and outflows and stress about it because I knew I would. It just
Hmm.
said, okay, try, go. And if by the holidays we've found nothing productive, no one wants to pay me for any of my skills and efforts, then we'll go find a regular full-time job. But it gave me the runway to experiment and try things without quite as much stress. And I know that's a place of privilege that I was able to sort of write that imaginary check to myself, but that I think really helped me focus my attention on finding the right types of clients and projects, and not get caught up in the sort of day-to-day, minute-to-minute cash flow.
And at what point were you like, okay, this is working. This is the path I'm going to stay on?
That's a good question. I'd say at like a year and a half.
Hmm.
And I was fortunate to have a few long-term clients. I end up with some long-term work and some short-term work. I mean, sometimes I facilitate a team day for an organization, and it's a little bit of prep and that day, and thank you very much. Maybe we'll talk again soon. In general, it's nice to have something that's more continuous. But I would say around about a year, year and a half, when I felt like I'm maybe not quite at the capacity, I'm not quite all the way full, but
Hmm.
I have enough going on and I'm bringing in enough that I'm meeting our needs as a household, with my partner's stable job and benefits. So that certainly helps as well. But I felt like I'm making enough, it's working enough, and I can see where some of these opportunities could become more and keep progressing into the types of work that I want to be doing. I'd say maybe like every quarter I also reassess and say, is this still working?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely one of those day-to-day situations. How different was it from what you expected it to be like versus the reality?
Um, I would say it's a little bit more fluid and unpredictable than I expected.
Hmm.
And I think, it's hard to separate that from current economic, political, social, et cetera, upheavals, to know what would my experience have been like if I was doing this 5 years ago or 5 years from now. Who
Hmm.
knows? Um, I think I've been surprised at some of the timelines. I'll have a conversation with someone who sounds like they are really eager to have me join that piece of work and help them with that thing immediately. And then
Hmm.
it takes 2 months to get a contract signed.
Hmm.
So I have come to understand that the timelines are certainly not in my control.
Hmm.
As I've said to some folks, like you can't push a rope. So, having to simultaneously be driven and self-propelling and also recognize that I'm not in control of the timelines and I can only do what I can control. And
Hmm.
there are aspects of timelines and processes that live outside of my influence
Hmm.
and I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, that could be tough.
Yeah.
3 years in, what does like your day-to-day look like? I know you said it's kind of fluid and depends, but if you were going to just generalize.
Mhm. Yeah, my day to day, I tend to have a couple of organizational clients where I'm in meetings with them. I'm working with the team. We're doing sort of what I call regular work, like regular product work, or helping them execute on whatever their internal work stream is that I'm supporting. So I have that. Those are usually pre-scheduled and ideally regular, not always. And I have a few coaching clients who I'm working with on leadership transitions or job searches or other growth moments. Those are deep 90-minute sessions. So if I have one of those, that's a good chunk of my day, and I make sure to have buffer time on either side because when I'm engaging with someone in coaching, I want to be like all on
Mhm.
them, fully attentive. I've turned off notifications from anything else. So usually there's a mix of some of those in a day. And then around the edges, I'm maybe taking calls with new contacts or old colleagues, trying to figure out where there might be a next opportunity or other sort of business development work to do. That gets slotted around the edges, which is can be challenging, but is part of the necessity of finding new things. There's always new opportunities coming up.
You mentioned being dialed in with coaching clients. Would you mind talking a little bit more about what that looks like with your coaching business?
Sure. So for my coachees, um, again, they're usually in some sort of transition moment. Maybe they've stepped
Hmm.
into a new leadership role, or they're setting out to build their own business, or they're searching for that next right role. So coaching with me, they're getting a real deep reflection and someone asking the kinds of questions that maybe they just haven't dug in with on their own or in their more casual conversations. So we'll set out to explore certain aspects of their career, and I'm really helping them to reflect and dig deeper and look at what maybe they're afraid to acknowledge or just haven't quite gone deep enough into the layers of the onion to figure out, and then helping them articulate what they want to do about it.
Mm.
So there's usually a next step or a commitment that they're making, whether it's about having some coffee chats with people in that other role they're curious about, or about having that difficult conversation with their colleague that they're at odds with. So they'll have commitments, and then I'm holding them accountable. So I typically meet with a coaching client every 2 weeks, and then we'll reflect on, well, how did that go? What did you learn? What came out of it? And they can continue to evolve their next steps on what they're going to do to keep growing.
Do you ever feel like there's any difficulty with them being transparent about, when someone's holding them accountable? Is it sometimes difficult to get them to be like, hi, I didn't do anything I said I was going to do, or that kind of thing?
I think something that is helpful for me in coaching is that I'm pretty approachable. I'm not scary. Um, So I think I get pretty quickly to a rapport with my
Mm.
clients where they are able to be open and to share and to fess up when they didn't do a thing, because I'm not going to yell at them, and
Hmm.
they're not getting graded for this. They're investing in it because they want to grow. So it's on them to make the most of it. And I find that when a client is paying for coaching, right? Because they could talk to a friend, they could ask a buddy to hold them accountable, but when they're actually
Hmm.
paying for someone to be their
Mm.
coach, I think that usually makes them more inclined to really do the work and be accountable. So when they're unable to do something that they had said they were going to, there's usually an underlying reason.
Hmm.
Something's holding them back, something is making them feel icky about it, or they're stuck, they're in a self-doubt moment. And then that's actually a really valuable thing for us to talk about, is what stopped them from doing that thing they had committed to do.
I could only imagine that your experience with a career coach and that pivotal moment of getting laid off and trying to figure out what you were going to do really helps in that scenario.
Yes, and I've worked with lots of other great coaches and mentors and other folks, and I just really believe in the value of someone helping you reflect and see through your own blind spots, and the accountability. Just like it's helpful to have a gym buddy for accountability, right? Like there are a lot
Oh,
of areas in
100%.
life where setting up that accountability structure makes all the difference between thinking about doing a thing and actually doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And a little bit about the pivot that you made. When you think about the corporate world, what do you miss and what are some things that you are happy to leave behind?
I miss the, and this is hard to separate between corporate and pre-pandemic corporate,
Mm,
but I do miss going into an office and having the casual conversations, those sort of water cooler chat, the basket of snacks that someone else
yes.
brought in, like that kind of chit chat I miss. And I get that now in other ways. I'm part of a variety of different sort of communities and online groups. And since I'm in the climate space, I spend a lot of time at Greentown Labs. So they've become sort of a place where I feel I exist and I'm part of the fabric. Um, so I miss some of that, the sort of office friends. And I sure miss the structural, like having the IT folks where when something isn't working, I can call someone up and they know what to do and they can help me unstick my computer. Now that's my spouse and I'm not sure he's always thrilled to be my IT guy. Um, so like some of that stuff, and the like holiday parties and those, it's more the social piece. So I found I've needed to do that elsewhere. And I thought I would be lonely being working from home and doing my own thing, but I actually find that all of the sort of business development, nurturing existing relationships, all of that is genuinely fulfilling for me.
Hmm.
So getting to catch up with old coworkers or being introduced to someone through a mutual contact. Oh, you should talk to Susie. You'd love them. Usually I do. People are really make really good intros. Rarely do I get introduced to a jerk. Like I have lovely conversations with people. So I'm surprised that I'm not more lonely, actually. That was one of the things I was most worried about that
Hmm.
has turned out to not be a problem because of the nature of the types of relationships and communities that I've been nurturing
Hmm.
and creating.
So, what are some things that you're happy to leave behind about corporate?
I'm happy to leave behind the politics and the sort of leadership shenanigans. I reflected in working with the career coach, I'd reflected on times in my career where I was in wonderful teams with wonderful bosses, wonderful colleagues doing the work that was really great. And there were multiple occasions where then something happened above me outside of my control, a change in leadership at the in the C-suite or a reorg of some sort or acquisition that then sort of ruined everything, right? That,
Hmm.
turned something toxic or moved me between someone I really liked working with to someone who I just didn't jive with. And I felt like I was a victim of the political shenanigans above me. And now it's not everything is in my control by any stretch, but I am
Hmm.
not as tightly coupled with those challenges. So when one of my clients has a reorg or does some layoffs, maybe that means they don't need me anymore. And that's a bummer, but that's now one portion of my portfolio. That's 20% of my work stream, not my whole job. So I have a level of separation from
Hmm.
those challenges in politics that makes me feel in some ways safer and more resilient, less vulnerable than when I had sort of all my eggs in one basket as a full-time person on a particular team.
Yeah, it's so scary when you do have all your eggs in one basket and you're so powerless. Like I just like you're talking about organizational changes. I had 9 managers in 4.5 years, and every time I would get to a place where I'm like, "Yay, you know that I'm a good employee," it would be like a new person. They'd be like, well, we need to really start from the beginning, and it was exhausting, and there was nothing I could do.
Right, exactly.
So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about fractional work. Fractional product management, I know it's a relatively new concept to a lot of people. How would you explain it and how does it actually work?
Sure. So there are lots of folks figuring out fractional, and you can apply fractional to lots of different types of roles. It's the idea of being embedded at less than full time, but still deeply involved in doing the work. So that's different from advising or consulting.
Hmm.
Right? You're
Hmm.
actually doing the work. You're part of the team, and just on a not full time basis. And what I like about that, I was very skeptical about whether that could work for product roles, because as a product manager, and you probably understand this as a design person, the product role, you're so often having to be the go-between or feeling like the linchpin, right? I need to answer every Slack message right away
Right.
because there's an engineer who can't continue working until I answer that one question about the requirement
Yes.
or what have you, right? I felt like I was always needed to be right there and on. And I feel like I'm skeptical that it would be doable of that at a 75 or 80% role, that it wouldn't just
Hmm.
become full time but paid at 75%. So what I'm finding with fractional is actually if it's even smaller, if it's two days a week or 25%, then the boundaries can be a lot clearer. This is
Hmm.
how much of my attention you have, and you're not expecting me to be available for every Slack message immediately. You're expecting that I'm coming to certain meetings or I'm delivering certain output, but I'm not, you don't own me.
Yeah.
And that's a really different relationship with an organization than being a full-time employee.
And so with it being fractional, is it like you mentioned a couple days of week? Is that for like an indeterminate amount of time, or is it like a set time, like it would be a contract role? How does that work?
It depends. Sometimes it's, oh, you need to be fractional to cover someone's leave, right? Someone's going on parental leave. They need someone to slot in for X number of months. Sometimes it is a more indefinite period of time or sort of the length of a project. Well, for this duration, we want to have this amount of product attention. So it varies. What I find is it depends also on the size of the organization. So I've
Hmm.
worked with a startup that had a couple of part-time engineers. So they sure didn't need a whole full-time product manager. They needed not even a quarter time product manager. They just needed someone doing that role and keeping things on track, keeping aligned with the roadmap. Uh, so sometimes that can be about the sort of size and scale of the work to be done, and
Hmm.
sometimes it is more about timing considerations around other members of the org.
You mentioned how it's easier to apply boundaries when you're doing fractional work. I'm curious how that does apply to being self-employed. I know that that could get really difficult with, you have your own business. How do you enforce work-life boundaries for yourself?
That's a great question, and I think that's one of those things that evolves.
Hmm.
I and in talking with other folks who are also self-employed and doing similar types of work, I think some people who don't, so I have an 8-year-old kid, and so he was going into kindergarten when I set out to do this work. Having got to get him to the school bus in the morning and got to pick him up from after school at a certain time, and then it's family time and dinner and all of that. That helps with the boundaries because that's important time and part of the reason I wanted to work for myself to have the time to be there with him.
Hmm.
So that helps a lot. Whereas I see some folks who are on their own who don't have either kids or a dog, they can get into, sort of working all evening, skip
Hmm.
dinner kind of
Hmm.
habits, and that's no fun. I'm also pretty good about I don't get push notifications for emails. I have to
Hmm.
go and actually ask for the email to show up. I don't have Slack notifications on my phone. So some of those things are and those are healthy habits you can set in a role at a full time at a company or on your own. But having some boundaries on who's allowed to ping you when is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I was talking to another guest about how you almost feel obligated in these corporate environments sometimes to get those pings all the time. And even if it's not verbally stated that it's necessary, you feel like it is. Like I felt like I couldn't really miss anything. Like, or at least had to be prepared for what was coming the next day.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like, as I said about having none of my clients, whether an organization or a coachee, everyone knows that I'm not fully theirs, that I
Hmm.
have other clients. So there isn't that, this is maybe not an appropriate analogy, but there isn't that assumption of monogamy,
It's a great
right? Like
analogy.
everyone knows that I have other folks I work with. So if I'm not available,
Get in line.
right, yeah,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
and if I'm going to be fully gone for a day, I'm facilitating a team day with one
Hmm.
organization. I'll let my other clients know,
Hmm.
hey, I'm totally offline on Tuesday. I'm with another client, so that they aren't hoping for a response quickly. But yeah, no one expects me to be always theirs and always available with a quick response.
That's a great point. And along the lines of not being fully theirs, how is the experience with building trust and being able to do meaningful work together?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the magic, and being an attentive listener and someone who I've always been good with the people part of the role.
Hmm.
So being someone who can talk with people and sort of stitch together, what's the situation here? Where's the friction? Or what are the challenges? What are the priorities? I'm able to pretty quickly get get close enough to what's going on to understand where can I help and where can I help move things forward. Um, so yeah, building trust is about listening and not assuming that I know everything,
Hmm.
asking good questions and not trying to, reshape the organization in my image, right?
Hmm.
I'm here to help and I'm here to support them and empower them to do the work also. I don't want anyone to be solely dependent on me for something. That doesn't
Hmm.
solve anything for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. That has to be a really refreshing change from the corporate life where you feel like everything is on your shoulders.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about AI and climate change, because I know you work in climate. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to that industry.
So I care a lot about climate, and I think it's a critical situation of our generation, really, of solving some of what's going on and putting into place whether it's policies or technology or structures that will help us keep a livable planet for our children.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people when they become parents have that like, oh no, we've got to fix the climate realization. And I think we're in a moment right now where a lot of the invention part has happened, right? Like we have the tools and the technologies and the know-how to solve a lot of these things. So it's actually a deployment issue. It's a policy issue. We just have to go do it.
Hmm.
And I when I made the switch from health tech into climate, like I was in health tech because I wanted to help people and make an impact, but it was starting to feel like, well, if we're too busy solving the health problems, and I'm not saying anyone should not be solving health problems, there are plenty of health problems to solve, but if we neglect the climate problems, the health problems are only going to get worse, right? We need to solve this root level issue of the climate change and climate impacts. So I'd started to make changes in my daily life. Right? We got put solar on our roof. We were composting our food scraps and stuff, but that didn't feel like enough. So I wanted my work time to be in that space as well, and was lucky to be able to make a pivot where the product work I was doing in health could be pretty well ported over into the climate space because we're still dealing with data and how we make use of it and how we collect it in a non-intrusive way. So the what was very similar. Um, and now as I've been working on my own, I try as much as possible to center my work and my clients around climate solutions, whether it's folks building tools and technologies that help or teams that are uh, empowering the next generation in the climate
Mhm.
space and things of that nature.
So, with technology, specifically AI, from your standpoint, do you think it's a tool for solving the climate problem or more part of the problem?
Yes, and I think it's really a both right now. And I this will be really interesting to watch in a few years and see,
Hmm.
how right or wrong we were. But um, I think right now we're in a moment where a lot of folks are really excited about AI and are sort of
Hmm.
spreading it scattershot on all of the problems in the hopes that something interesting sticks. Um, and not all of those are good uses of AI necessarily.
Hmm.
So I think we're in a bit of an overshoot right now. I expect that the pendulum will swing back a little bit, but I think there are a lot of great applications of AI in climate solutions, whether it's in analyzing the data that helps us make better decisions or using energy more efficiently or alerting for weather, like weather challenges are going to get worse and more extreme, but we can understand it better or be more resilient using in predictive and analytical ways. I think that's great.
Hmm.
Um, I do think there are places where we're using AI to do things for us that are taking away our independent thinking and individual uh, um, yeah, like thinking and analyzing and communicating, where I don't think AI is being helpful. And that's where, I think the damage from the energy use, the amount of energy that AI is using and the water impacts and other sort of negative environmental impacts, there it's not worth it. Absolutely worth it if it's helping us really solve the problem. But I
Hmm.
think it's being used in some places where it's sort of frivolous and not helpful.
What would be some examples of where you think it could be impacting our ability to think and maybe a little frivolous?
I think there's some amount of, like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if in this slide presentation, if I'm doing a workshop, oh, would it be fun to have AI generate some images that are what I'm trying to communicate. Oh, show some teams supporting one another. AI, could you wizard me a picture of humans making a pyramid? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where like does that really move the workshop forward?
Yeah.
I could just, instead I could take a couple of pictures myself or, stock photos that
Hmm.
are fine and the ability of my audience to get what it is I'm saying is not materially impacted by how fun and kitschy that picture is. So like stuff like that. Or certainly, I've seen some instances where people I'm working with are having Copilot generate that email for them
Mm.
and not really reading it. And then also not really reading the response. They're just reading the AI summary of the response, for
Mm.
instance. And I feel like we get into some situations where we're just having our AIs talk to each other and we're not actually communicating anymore. And as a teamwork person, I think that's detrimental to our, good functioning as a team. It's so easy to communicate carelessly
Hmm.
and misunderstand each other. Like we even already were having challenges with, oh, well, we communicate these things, over Slack or Teams chat instead of email, and who communicates through which medium and how well are they listening to each other? And I feel like now with AI sort of butting in the middle of that sometimes,
Hmm.
like that,
Hmm.
I think that only gets worse. Um, there are certainly things we can do about that, but I think some organizations are encouraging their people to just use it for anything, and in that enthusiasm are maybe missing opportunities to be good collaborators with one another.
And really be immersed in the critical thinking process. Like I know that when I put things together step by step and think it through versus my thoughts put into something that is created, I definitely feel less connected, less comprehensive about it.
Right. Right. For instance, with my coaching clients, I take notes physically on my, sort of electronic tablet, but
Hmm.
I'm handwriting, taking the notes so that I'm really engaged with them. And then I'm synthesizing that to put together the summary of what we talked about and their next steps, because that process is helpful for my brain to understand what came up, what were the themes, what were the ahas. I don't want AI doing that. They're not paying me for AI to do that. They're paying me
Right.
for my thinking and my experience. So that process is part of that analysis, and I don't want to, offload that step to some other tool.
Yeah, that was really important for me through, college, grad school, taking notes just to help me kind of listen and write and photograph. Like it's a whole different way of learning. And speaking of learning, you're helping build a program that gets high schoolers interested in clean energy. What have you learned from that experience?
Ah, that's been such a fun project this spring. So I'm working with Project Learn, which is a group in Lowell, and they're an education-based nonprofit. They do lots of after-school programs, summer programs, enrichments across the ages, uh, little kids to after high school. And this program is specifically for early high school, so rising ninth and 10th graders. And it's about exposing them to careers in clean energy and what opportunities there might be, because some of them may just not be aware of these opportunities. And if
Hmm.
they can learn about them and get excited, we're showing them sort of a broad menu of things. If there's something they get excited about, it might impact sort of what classes they choose to take in 10th, 11th, 12th grade that set them up for those sorts of careers. And they've done similar programs, this organization, in other fields, but this was
Hmm.
their first time doing one in the clean energy space. So they brought me in to help connect them with some of the companies that are doing these things. So I was able to set up some career speakers and some field trips to some really cool companies doing neat stuff in their area, right? So not even far away, but like in their, neighboring towns doing cool stuff so that these students could get an idea of, well, what would it be like to work in solar, to work in building insulation, to work with
Hmm.
energy efficiency programs, and see what sparks their interest. I wish I had seen some of that when I was a student. I had no idea. And it's been really fun to learn sort of through that what are the opportunities and where they're. I think there's sort of a new understanding of there's a whole set of jobs that might be helped by AI but are not going to be replaced. AI is not going to put new insulation in your walls,
Right.
and it's not going to install your water heater. Like the water heater may be smarter and empowered with AI to better predict your usage, but a human with hands is going to have to install it and put the pipes in place and get it all set up. And there's there's actually a shortage of skilled workers in a whole bunch of these fields. And that's what I was saying about the deployment. We have these technologies and all this great uh, ability to be efficient and use clean energy, but a lot of it actually requires humans getting out there and installing these things and setting these things up and building these things that we need the workers who are graduating today and soon to be excited about those roles and get into those fields that um, they may just not know about. So it's exciting to help them see what's out there and the variety of them. Do you love heights? We need people climbing, wind turbines and electric poles. Do you hate heights? Then that's not the role
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Great if you can figure that out early and not be on a career path that's going to end up with you terrified at the top of a tower. Maybe you love tight spaces. Cool. There's a role for that. Maybe you hate working with other people. There are plenty of roles that are very individual. So, like helping them sort of think about what it is that lights them up uh, early enough that they can be exploring that and sort of charting a path in that direction.
So the idea of this show came from working in tech and everything was speeding up and AI was being integrated and it was like, is it do I remember when AI felt a little bit like cheating, and then there was all this pressure to use AI, and then it was like, where's the balance? And everyone was so stressed out, like job security. There's just this escalation of uncertainty.
Yes.
In your perspective, what would you consider calm tech?
Hmm. I was thinking about this. I was on a hike this past weekend up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and I was thinking about this question. I anticipated you'd ask about this. Some of the tech that I find calming, right? Like I really, I still read my books or paper. I don't use my Kindle anymore. Um, but I appreciate some of the places where I can let tech make a decision for me that I don't want to make. Like
Hmm.
it's important to me to do the analysis myself on this work situation. It is not important to me to figure out what playlist to listen to while I'm trying to get some work done. So if Spotify is going to recommend for me that, your day list, yeah, it's a Monday afternoon rock ballads of the 90s. Sure.
Hmm.
Sounds great. Yeah, have at it. So letting the tool help with the decisions that are not important, but that are like that trip us up, what to have for dinner, what to listen to. That's nice. I'm a big to-do list person. I use the Todoist app, and I find that having a really easy, structured way of keeping myself organized helps me be calm. Like I can, I'm upstairs brushing my teeth and realize that I need to follow up with this thing, or I need to bring more toilet paper upstairs to the bathroom. I can just add that into my list and know that I'll see it later at a useful time to have
Hmm.
that reminder. So I think it keeps me from having to brain churn on a thing because I know that I put it on the list.
Hmm.
I'll see it. I'll see it at a relevant time to do that thing. And I don't have to try to hassle myself to remember something otherwise.
So a little bit of automation.
Yeah, yeah.
And what
Light
would,
automation.
and on the opposite end, what would you consider stressful tech?
Mm. Um, I mean, I think there's lots of stressful tech. I think there the tools that are trying to um, like I just don't want to automate something that doesn't need to be automated, I
Hmm.
guess.
Hmm.
That's the piece where, and I have friends and colleagues who are saying, "Oh, well, I built an agent to do this and that for me." I'm like, I don't need an agent to do that. That's 3 minutes of my day, and spending the next 3 hours building that agent is not actually, that doesn't feel worthwhile to me for the 3 minutes it's going to save me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I find that stressful. Um, I certainly find some of the notifications. I've limited my social media. I'm on LinkedIn a decent amount, but I don't let it ping me or anything. So I think being able to tune the settings of what can ping me and get my attention is important.
It's really interesting. Most people that I've talked to, when we talk about stressful technology, they mention some form of notifications. And the way to calm down is to disconnect. What do you think it is about notifications that can be so stressful?
Well, I think it's just they're demanding. They're
Mm-hmm.
asking you to pay attention. And like right now I'm talking to you. I don't want something dinging at me. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm intentional about turning things off or not having it be noisy. I don't have a smartwatch. There are
Hmm.
plenty of places I can tell what time it is. I don't need the notification to then be showing up on my wrist. Like I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be in a conversation with someone and they're like subtly
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah,
at their
yeah, yeah.
wrist to swipe away some text that came in. It's like that's no better than me opening my phone to look at the text that came in. Like you're still distracted by that thing. So I don't want a smartwatch. I don't want like all of that stuff pinging at me. And like if I'm in a conversation, I'm there for that conversation. I don't want to be, noticing all these other stuff I have to do. Those will still be there when I'm done, and then I can go check those emails or respond to those messages. So I think hygiene around that is really important, and I try to help others that I work with to find that also. But I think I mean, I'll confess when I was, especially as a product manager, but even now as a solo business person, I like the feeling of importance that someone wants me for something, right? Someone's pinging me because they
Yeah.
need my attention. They need to ask me a question. And the feeling of being wanted is, there's a human nature to want that. But I think we've also realized that there's a limit to that and that it distracts us from other things.
Last question. What's one thing that anyone listening today that you could recommend that they do to actually contribute to something that matters?
Yeah, I vote as often as you can.
Amen.
I,
Yeah.
as much as I was complaining about politics in the office and corporate settings, local elections, local issues, and state and like every time there is an opportunity to vote, to be engaged in your community and civically. We didn't talk about this, but I lead the sustainability committee in my town as my way of giving back locally. But there's so many ways to be involved and to try to make a difference, and the local stuff really matters. Like you had mentioned, data centers popping up overnight. A lot of that happens or doesn't happen based on where, local zoning, local elections, local boards and the groups that make those decisions, whether it's, city council, town council, all of that stuff is so important. And there's a lot of apathy these days and a lot of, well, it doesn't matter, everything at the federal level. So what does it even matter what's happening locally? But actually at the local and state level, there's so much that can be done and must be done to do things in the right direction for climate and for AI and for human rights and individual protections that we need to take every opportunity to make our perspectives heard and have an impact. So be informed, vote anytime, vote vote early if you have to, vote, bring other people to vote, make sure everyone you know.
Get out and vote. Exactly.
Because that's how you
Exactly.
get your perspective out there and make things happen.
Well, Tiana, this has been such a great conversation, and thank you for sharing your story and giving us so much to think about. I appreciate you taking the time to join the Calm Tech Life.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.